Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how I applied the water slides to this tumbler, as well as the blood splatter and the drip around the rim. I have already glittered this cup with a beautiful white glitter, Conic from Create by Firefly. So you'll see my tumbler is already epoxied smooth. You do not want to sand or do a clear coat before you apply your water slides because you want it to be nice and glossy underneath, so that will reflect once you put the water slides on top. I have an inkjet printer, so I printed these and then used Rust-Oleum matte clear spray paint, and I coated them about 2 times to make sure that I locked in all of that ink. I let them dry completely for a couple of hours and trimmed them out to apply to the cup. I'm using warm water. You don't want to use cold water because it can cause your water slides to crack. Using warm water is going to make them a little flexible. That way you can curve them around cups like this. And for larger water slides, it's much easier to work with in general. I'm going to take this little squeegee. You can get them at the dollar store, any craft store, or Amazon, and just work the water out from underneath this water slide. And then for the wording that we're going to put here on the front, I'm going to trim as close to the letters as possible and actually cut off that little bottom portion that is in red. That way I can work with it just a little bit better. I want it to be as flexible as possible so I do not have any creases around this curve of the cup. And you'll notice when I do put this water slide on the cup, it did need a little additional trimming, just so I didn't have any creases where there are just a couple of words. So it is okay to do that as long as the cup and the back of the water slide is still wet. That way the glue will still adhere to your cup whenever you squeegee that water out. Normally, I do put my decals just a little bit higher than I am applying this one. The reason I'm coming down just slightly further than I usually would is because I'm doing the drip around the top. I want to give plenty of room for it. That way it comes down and matches the rest of the cup along the back side. Once all of my water slides are on and I have gotten as much water out from under them as possible, I am going to take some tissue paper and wipe all of the extra water off of my cup. You can also use a microfiber cloth or even some coffee filters. This just does not pull your water slides. A lot of times if you use a paper towel, it gets wet and then it will stick to your water slides and it can rip or crack them. Tissue paper has always worked for me, so it's my go-to. It's definitely inexpensive as well. And then we're just going to go back and trim the edges off of this crime scene tape so it is not curving around the bottom or have any overlapping on the rim. And next we're just going to move directly into the blood splatter. I have 2 different reds here. I didn't have the exact color to match the font on my wording here, so I'm just going to mix myself until I get the color that matches. And now that I have the color that I want to match, I'm going to get a small paintbrush that has coarse bristles on it, dip it in the paint, and just pull back with my finger and flick onto the cup. Once I finish the splatter, I'm going to mix up a little extra ink epoxy, and I'm going to go back to the paint that I mixed up and add a few small scoops of that into my epoxy so the drip will be the same color as the splatter. To thicken my epoxy, I am going to add a little bit of Nice and Thick from CCDIY. You want to add just a little bit of this at a time. It can get pretty clumpy if you use too much, so just stir up little by little until you get the consistency that you need to pull around the top of the tumbler. You want this to be not too thick that it's not workable, but thick enough to stay put until you are ready to put the drips where you would like on your cup. What I usually do is after each time that I add some Nice and Thick in, I will just pull the epoxy around the top rim of my cup that I am mixing in to just test the thickness. Once it stops dripping down, I will just sit it to the side for a second, and then you basically just paint a line around the rim of your cup. Make sure it is thick. The thicker, the more that it will have, of course, dimension and drip down just a little bit. Hold your cup sideways so it does not start actually falling down your cup just yet. You want to get a nice thick layer around your rim, and then you can go back and add where you would like a little bit thicker drips and actually control how wide or how thin they are. Don't worry about getting it over the top of the rim. You'll see me go over the rim once I have all of my drips on there. But you're going to stand it straight up like this, and I know the angle is a little difficult to see. But I'm going to just put a little on my popsicle stick and go over the spots that I would like to have the drip downs. If you want thin ones, then just get a little bit on your popsicle stick and stay in more of a controlled area whenever you apply it over top of what you have put around the rim. If you want it to be thicker and not be such a long or a prominent drip, then get quite a bit on your popsicle stick and then make your area of extra epoxy just a little bit thicker. And I mentioned earlier not to worry about the rim. I just went over the top with my popsicle stick and scraped all the excess off. Once this dries, you can sand your rim just a little bit to expose a little bit of stainless like we had before we applied this drip on. So you can get that nice seal around the top in your final coat. Once this is finished, I'm going to sit it aside for about 4 hours, and then we are going to do a final coat of epoxy. I already have about 20 to 25 milliliters of my A Little Extra Ink epoxy here. I'm going to apply it over the bottom of the cup first, and then once I start around the drip, you will see that I just take my finger and go in all of those little crevices to make sure that I get a good coat on top of there and there's not any epoxy pulled up in between any of those drips. While the drip was drying, I actually thought that it needed some additional splatter on there. So I did go back and put a little bit of a handprint and a couple of extra spots just to fill in some space that didn't fill with the drip around the top. Once I finish my application, I'm just going to run over really quickly with a torch and then allow it to sit for 4 to 6 hours before I can remove it from my turner, and then the full 72 hours before I can get ready and ship to my customer. And here is our final result. I was so excited to make this design. I know it has been out for quite a while, but I hadn't seen many with the drip around the top. And I wanted to be a little extra because my customer gave me creative freedom on this one. And she absolutely fell in love with it. I hope all of you have too, and that this tutorial was really helpful. I will drop all of my supplies down in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video and hit the little bell in the corner if you would like to be updated on all of the videos dropping on the channel. Thanks everyone.